I wanted to get involved in a sport activity with my son. When I retired, he was 12 years old. So I always grew up in the farm ponds of Missouri and what we call Peabody Coal Company strip pits, you know, and we used those plastic worms years ago that was all pre-made with hooks in them with two little twisty or two little twirly birds on both ends. I mean, that was yesteryear. And it either came in red, black, or cream. And that's what we had if you didn't use fresh grasshoppers or anything like that. But so I got involved in fishing when I retired, and I've been involved with youth fishing programs. I've been a tournament director for 9 years for the Fishers of Men at the Christian Bass Trail for the adults and youth side of the house called Legacy. So anyway, I found out through Paul, I was introduced to Paul and found out that we do things that he does things for Wounded Warriors, and I've been involved with Wounded Warriors ever since I retired in 1999. We started off with the Pentagon Lagoon. I mean, right outside of Pentagon, we call Columbia Marina, and I call Pentagon Lagoon. That's where we used to start all of our tournaments for the Wounded Warriors. And so welcome tonight. We're going to have a lot of classes going on throughout the summer, and we're going to build upon those classes. All right. I am not here, even though he says I'm a professional angler. I dress the part, but I'm not a KBD or anybody else. I just go out and try. I started off knowing nothing in 1999. And over the years, my background in education and instructing when I was in the military, I just all kind of fell together, and that's what I'm doing today, is to present you class. We're going to talk very basically first about rods and reels, and then I'm going to get to the meat and potatoes of tonight, and that's I'm going to introduce Tank Mosley, a good friend of mine, former Marine, MP. He'll go the rest of the way with that, but he's here to help me, and he's going to talk about the spring fishing on the Potomac River, because hey folks, it is now March. Yes, I know we just got through with another 6 inches of snow, all right, but the fish are going to start biting, and springtime on the Potomac is phenomenal. If you can get out on the shoreline, like we said down here in Powhit Bay, right off of the area where the archery range is, and they got a pier down there as well, big old wooden pier that goes out. All right, there's grass beds that start out there, and he'll tell you more about how to fish them a little bit in the springtime, but it's phenomenal. You will have a blast. All right, and I look forward. I'm going to try my best this year to come out once or twice and bring my boat, and Tank will probably do the same thing. I've got a Marine sponsor now, Richmond Marine Center out of Richmond, Virginia, that I'll bring up several Triton aluminum boats, possibly a Legend. I'm going to entice somebody, possibly a Legend, and we're going to try to volunteer our time. But we do have, like you have families, and we also fish competitively. So I'll be on the water again this weekend. I got a tournament in next weekend, and it's not looking good. And I'm defending champ for Lake Anna, and I got a big bullseye on the back. So you got to go out there and do your seat time. We'll talk more about that. So anyway, this article is, I choose, you know, the best thing nowadays, and you folks, you young people, especially younger people, know better than I. Social media, okay, and the internet, you can find out anything that you search for as long as you put keywords in it. Now me, this old timer, it takes me a while, but I have a daughter that's 22, and I just asked her, she showed me how to use my i4S and everything else. If I have a stumble block, well, I'll call Tank, hey Tank, how to do this. So, but it works. So I like using a place called Bass Resource, all right? And it's a pretty good site that you can pick up information from and learn from, all right? I used to say when I was an instructor on base in my military days that instructing, okay, or providing instructions to a soldier, okay, ends day to day. Do you not agree? I go to work today, I have a supervisor above me, she or he will tell me what I need to do, that's instructing. It ends day to day. But education ends with life. All right? And what I mean by that is you can never stop learning. If the will is there and the mind is open, you can learn anything. And if I learn how to fish, become competitive, so can this man here. Because I heard you say earlier, I can't catch bass or I can't do this. You can. And we're here to help you, okay, just give you the basics. And then you just go out and spend what we call seat time. You know, you've got to keep practicing, just like you do in the military, just like we did in the military. You know, you're on the range shooting M16, whatever the case, but you have to practice, okay? But now, my weapons are rod and reels, my lures and choices. I have to understand the techniques that I'm going to use based upon the conditions. Okay, so I have to study who? My enemy, bass. And don't let you fool yourself. That bass is smarter than what you think. Okay, and you have to be intelligent. You have to know what your enemy is doing. Same thing. So take what you've learned in the military and think strategy. And you got to do it. All right. And sometimes it wins. Sometimes it don't. You know, I struck out weekend for last. I struck out 0. I've never zeroed under catching nothing. I mean nothing. Not even a dink on Lake Anna. I usually catch at least one fish. Lake Anna's good one day, bad the next. Tank can tell you the same thing. But typically I'll catch a fish at 0. I was kicking myself in the tail end all the way home. I was really disappointed. So, enough said. So I'm going to talk about, you got basic reels. You have what we call a closed reel, and I'll show you that. You have a bait caster reel, which is this type. All right, and then you have an open face reel, which is this type, or a spinning reel is also known as that. And we're going to just talk about some basic characteristics. Okay, with any reel, you have to have a handle. All right, with any reel, you have to have a spool. That spool is what you tie your line to. That line can be monofilament fluorocarbon braid. It's typically the type of lines you use today, anywhere from 2 pounds up to 80 pounds. All depends upon what kind of fishing you're doing, whether it's bass fishing, crappie fishing, drop fishing, or deep sea fishing. All right. Now, also on those reels, you have to have a way to set the drag so you can fight that fish. Okay. So on a bait caster, for example, it's what they call the star drag, usually on the left or right hand side. Now, my reels, okay, are left-hand crank. All right.
That's because you're weird.
I knew it was coming. I'm not weird. My preference is that because I grew up throwing spinning reels, and most spinning reels, okay, the weird people, okay, can use a left-hand crank with a spinning reel, but they can't with a bait caster. But at a young age, I educated and trained myself to do that. Why? Because I like tossing it with my right hand, which is my dominant hand, instead of switching the whole setup to my left hand, the crank, I can immediately start cranking. I can immediately set that bill crank and I'm ready to go. It's a preference. All right, it's a preference. Okay, so you have that. Now this one here, in particular, you have a drag system. Now the closed-in ones are your zip code 202s. You ever heard them? Your zip code 303s and things of that nature are your closed-in bait caster type reels. Okay, you can get them at Walmart, Dick's Sporting Goods, Bass Pro Shop, things of that nature. It's got a button on the back. It still has a drag system, but it's got a button on the back. You just click it and you throw it and release the button and your line will go out. This you got to do a lot more work, okay, this type of bait caster. But once you take and train yourself, you'll never go back to that zip code 33 or 303 or 44. You won't do it, all right, because these are so much more versatile. But in this, I got a spool on this particular one. These are old Corrados. Matter of fact, this is an antique now. They don't make them no more and they don't sell them no more. Get out of there. But you have the spool, and the spool, mess around and it won't come out for me. We'll just leave it in there right now. The spool has a series of clutches. And we can all see them as those light pink things. All right. If you engage them and push them outwards, all right, when I throw that bait, those clutches will force themselves out by centrifugal force, and they'll go against this inside this plate, all right? And what that does, it allows how much that spool will free spool along with this tension knob. So you have to adjust more mechanism, just like you have to adjust your fire. You got to adjust your front sight, right? Sometimes you have to adjust your back sight depending upon the type of weapon you got. So it's the same thing. You have to adjust, okay? But it's a great technique and a great reel. Bait casters. Spinning rods are the same thing. Let's back up one more quick time. Where's my other bait caster? This bait caster, that's all right, BPS, man. Guaranteed to take it back and then replace it. Bass Pro Shop qualifier, all right, this is a $99 reel, but come March time frame, which we're in March now, right? They have these on sale for $69. So I go down and buy them. They last me 2 years. I've got my money out of them. Okay? If they drop, they break, or they bust, or someone throws one in the water, and I've had that happen to me. Warrant officer, a friend of mine many years ago, gave him a pole, and he went to throw it the first time. Pole, reel, and everything, deep sixed it. I'm like, okay, this is my warrant officer in charge of my platoon. I'm like, okay, what am I getting into? He replaced it, but it was still funny. This one has the same thing. It's got a star drag, it's got your spool, but on the inside of this one, I'll loosen this knob up here, just this, pull this out. I also have the clutches, but also on the outside of this, I have a magnetic spool, or a magnetic turn dial, where I can adjust it from 0 to 10. All right, so again, I have another means of controlling this type of baitcaster better in the wind than if I just had certificate brakes. But it comes time to practice. Now, I might have maybe 1 brake or 2 brakes on, and I'll have this at 0. She's pretty much free spooling. Why? Because when you throw a baitcaster, and you watch different videos that we have up here, when you go on the site, you control a lot of how far that line goes out with your thumb. You can't just hold this thing and put your finger on here and throw it off there and take your thumb off that spool, because you're going to get what we call a professional overrun. Okay, it's going to just spool all kinds of line out, and it's called a bird's nest. But we guys, us guys that call ourselves tournament anglers, to make us look good, we call it a professional overrun. All right, we never get bird's nest. Okay, so, but there's a lot of factors there. One that, if you've never been fishing, never have been fishing, and you don't know much about, a spinning reel or an open face reel is the most easiest that you can learn to throw. Okay, again, it has a spool. It has your drag. This is how I set my drag. Right, we have a handle. Basically, you would take and take your line. Let me do this. Be careful. This hook has got a barb and everything attached to it. But I would take my thumb or my trigger finger, and I would pick up on that line. I would open up the bail. All right, and then I'll release my thumb or my finger, my trigger finger, and the line will be on. And it comes off here naturally, free flowing. You don't have to keep your finger on it, but you can take and stop it with your finger if you wanted to. All right, just by just touching the bail if you want to. If you know you're going to overshoot your target, you can touch the line and it will drop. The only thing I do is I recommend closing the bail by hand. One of the biggest kickbacks on these is line twist. You get a lot of line twist. In other words, sometimes you just open the bail, all of a sudden the line just rolls out on you. Okay, because how it pulls up. All right, a lot of that is caused by what bait you use, okay, and how you take and, whoops, this is what I need to be careful of. What a carpet. Oh no, I'm not going to pull that. That will take and have an upset facility manager. But that's the characteristics of a open face. So again, I really do encourage you to log in to his site. Don't cost you a dime. It will not cost you a dime. I encourage you to roll in. Now, real quickly, there's all types of rods.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
Why? I mean, you said like the open face is the easiest to use, but why would you use? Was it closed as opposed to open?
Oh, you use baitcaster versus this and that. There's
Yeah,
all
like
kinds
if
of
you're going fishing, which one are you gonna?
There's all kinds of different techniques, and Tank is going to cover some of that tonight when he goes into his next class about fishing. Just really briefly, I use this, an open face, for finesse fishing. Using shaky heads, light baits, 6-pound test line, 8-pound test line. All right, so it's really finesse fishing, drop shotting, shaky head. I know these all might be Greek terms to you right now, but we're going to build up on these classes, and you'll learn all this. And also, you're going to go to FishingCommunity.Org, you click on the classes and the topics that we have listed, or go to Bass Resource. okay? And just start clicking on them. When you go to Bass Resource, they have tons of information. If you want to know more about bait casting, it's there. If you want to know more about crankbaits, it's there. If you want to know about spring fishing, fall fishing, summer fishing, how to fish a Carolina rig, okay, how to fish drop shot. I mean, all these are Greek terms, but you can learn it all. And Bass Resource homepage is not just the only one. And you log in, it's free. Get your own login. I'm good. And also they got a chat line, all right, or forum site, okay? I'm called Gone Fishing 2. Years ago, whoever watched the show called Gone Fishing? Anybody remember that? With Virgil Ward? You young guys, I understand that you might not, but I used to watch. That's what I grew up on. I didn't have bill dams. You know, so I sat there with my dad, all right, and I watched Virgil Ward, okay, and Gone Fishing. And half the time he was fishing out a canoe. All right, well, half the time when I first started learning, I had a flat bottom boat, all right, and if I didn't have an oar, I took a piece of 1x4, and that was my oar. And I'd go out in the strip pits. My dad said, you know, he knew where I was at, he knew I was safe. I'd be out there all day on a Saturday, you know, having fun. You know, get hot, take a dip, you know, that type of thing. If I couldn't catch them on that worm I was telling you about, I'd go to the shore and catch grasshoppers. And throw them out there, you know, throw grasshoppers out there. But anyway, so that's, you know, what I use that for. Bait casters, I use for crankbaiting, Carolina rigs, I mean, all sorts of things. But I can also take and finesse fish with, okay, a bait caster and a bait casting rod if I do the right mixing and matching of my equipment. And we'll be getting into that when we talk about pitching and flipping and what type of things you should do. Another type of reel, rod, is what they call the regular, you know, pistol grip. All right. Now don't freak out. See my eyes? Usually the eyes are like this one here. This is a conventional rod. All the eyes are on top of this rod. Okay? Nothing wrong with All-Star rods. They used to sponsor me when I first got started back in 2000, 2001. But as Paul mentioned, I'm now, and also not only myself, but actually Tank introduced me to the man. His name's John Ballard. He owns JB Custom Rods. All of his guides start on the top, but they end up on the bottom. It's called a spiral rack. We'll talk about that more later. So don't freak out if you think the pole's broke. But this is what they call a pistol grip pole. All right. That's his open face. And here's you know, my what I call my jig pole. I mean my trick spin. It's made for finesse fishing of light crankbaits, the old shad wraps that are real lightweight. And I have 10-pound fluorocarbon. I like using fluorocarbon and things. So there's all kinds of different things up here. I got my jig pole. This is, you know, my favorite rod, one of my favorite rods, jig pole. Last March in Anna with jigs, what we call hard candy, a color called hard candy. My friend and I team up. Jim Whitman, he's a retired master gunning sergeant. We had 22.5 pounds and took first place on Anna using these poles and jigs. That was the presentation that we found that was working for us. It's the pattern that we found. Okay, but as Tate will talk to you, there's all kinds of different patterns and presentations because what's happening down here can be up here. Okay, so again, this is just a quick rundown of the rods and reels because I want to get into the meat and potatoes while we're here tonight because we're taking tag teaming and we want to talk about spring bass fishing. All right, so I like at this time, I thank you. If there's any questions, I'm going to turn it over to Tank so we can start having fun and talk about how we're going to take and go get that invasive largemouth bass, or they call it the bucket mouth. There's all kinds of